are listening to the Moody Girl podcast with me, Emily Fazer. Throughout this series, we're going to be opening the minds of experts and delving into the world of alternative healing methods. So, hi, Ravi. Thank you so much for being on the Moody Girl podcast today.
Hey, thank you, Emily. Really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, I kind of, again, was introduced to you and your work through a work colleague, actually, because you were doing some kind of sessions in Suffolk. And then I heard about, another colleague of mine who came to London and did one of your sessions. And so that's kind of what sparked my interest. So I know, like right now, Wim Hof is very topical. There's TV programs on it. Everyone seems to have got into wild swimming during the pandemic. I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about how you started Wim Hof, like what made you start Wim Hof, and a little bit more about the backstory leading into that.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, you're right. I think that the method's definitely become more prominent over the last few years in particular, which is great. And we'll get into it, I'm sure, with massive benefits to cold exposure, to breath work, and kind of combining it with mindset. Really for me, how I got into it was, I guess, a little bit through accident and also by recommendation. But if I can maybe just share a little bit of my story, I grew up in a North London-based Asian family, which, you basically, as growing up, what were you going to be? You're either going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or a failure. And I actually went down the route initially of wanting to be a surgeon. And so had a passion for medicine, or I thought I did, but that quickly changed into economics at university, and then into a career in investment banking, which was in the end about 11, 12 years. And I guess my journey through that time was one where I frankly became, maybe a lot of people can relate to this, I became my job. I became the outputs of my life. I guess I was performing at life in the way that many people can relate to, again, through good salary, a car, a house, eventually finding a lovely partner. I guess all the nice ticks were happening. But something always in me when I was at work, something wouldn't always compute with just how people behaved at work, and then how they behave outside of work, and also just their general levels of happiness that I was witnessing. And these people had, in my mind at least, everything. Again, just from the holiday homes, the kids growing up, and what they could afford. And so something never really computed. And it was always this sense of, well, if you wanted to get ahead in your career, particularly in the bank, something else had to give, something had to be sacrificed. And you saw that with a lot of people around their health, mental health, time with the family. Maybe it was just not spending enough quality time on themselves with the people they loved. All these kind of things were happening. So it was that, combined with the fact that, it had become my job, and I just kind of felt that I wasn't happy, but that I wasn't doing anything about it. And I was just going through those steps in life all through those years. And it was actually my partner, Paris, who you met recently, who really came into my life as almost like a light to kind of pull up the blinds and kind of say, hey, you're a great guy, but really, like, what are you passionate about? What are you living for? What is your purpose? And she did it in a really, I guess, a very intuitive way of kind of leading me and helping me kind of just start to think a little bit about that process. And that process, took many, many, many years over the last 8 years that we've been together. Mm-hmm. But frankly, for the first four of our relationship, I probably did a little bit of work around that, but really was still just performing at life, thinking that everything would be rosy. Mm-hmm. And it kind of ended in a little bit of a crescendo where we went on a break about 4 years in, so about half into our relationship. And I was really sat there faced with this conundrum of, well, I don't really know who I am, what I stand for, what my purpose was. Yet the person that I loved the most was telling me that this was something I need to start searching for. And I'll never forget it. I was at a launch party for a product, and a random, really lovely woman came up to me, and the first thing she said is, "Hey, tell me about yourself." And the first words that came out of my mouth, I said, "Oh, I'm an investment banker." And then the next two words that came out of my mouth were, a few words were like, "I got to leave." because I think the penny dropped at that point, being alone, having just lost the love of my life, who I was, or who I thought I was, or who I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so that really launched my practice into self-reflection, I guess, self-development from that standpoint. And like a lot of people, I went to yoga, meditation as kind of the, I guess, obvious outlets that you always hear about.
Yeah.
And they definitely did something. I think it was maybe more for inner balance and alignment for me at that time. But really, what really flipped the switch was being introduced to the Wim Hof Method through a friend's mum, actually. And also my cousin's husband had been practicing the method for quite a while. And both these kind of messages came together at the right time, I guess.
Wow.
And it's been a journey since then, because accessing that method and doing it for the first time and every day since for the rest of my life has really turbocharged my ability to reconnect with myself more deeply. That's emotionally, physically, spiritually as well. And allowed me actually to, and now that I'm an instructor in it, really find my purpose, my passion, which is also just kind of launched more broadly into the rest of the walks of my life as well.
Wow, that's, I mean, just even when you said that question, that's like the same sort of thing happened with me in terms of like, I think it was like a mindset course I did, and I interviewed her on another podcast, but it was like, she literally just in the course was like, can you answer this question? Like, who are you? Like, what gets you up in the morning? And I was just like, fuck, that's really hard, like we go through life, as you say, just like establishing ourselves by our job, through our friends, through what we wear, through, how much money we're bringing in. And it's so cool that like in that situation, that was when the penny dropped, when that, that question, which is such a simple question,
Yeah.
and but
Beautiful
it's like,
question.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I said it to Christian, my husband, after I did that course, I was like, who are you? And he was just like, God, that's so much harder than you think it is to answer,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like when you started doing Wim Hof, so, you went through all of that transition where you were like confronted with like, who am I? What am I here doing? I'm not doing, I'm not enjoying my work. I'm not kind of, I guess looking after my health and my soul. How did you kind of come out of that then? Did you quit your job, or what were the kind of next steps for you on your journey?
Yeah, so really through the method. So two things the method really did for me. The breath work made me a better stress manager. So instead of letting everyday stress rule my life, whether that be as simple things from being late for work, no hot water, to the commute, to then your boss stressing you out, etc.
Yeah,
it gave me that ability to build a bubble around myself, so that when those things happen, I still felt in control.
Yeah.
And then the second piece was from the cold was more energy. And so the combination of better stress management and more energy, for me at least, led to better decisions. So from a career standpoint, I actually still stuck in the role for, I guess in the end, a couple more years.
Yeah.
But I was able to launch again into the more harder discussions, harder topics that I wasn't really facing at work, what I was happy about, what I wasn't. On the energetic side, I actually started to put more energy into the things I was really into, as opposed to just the stuff that I'd been doing prior, or the stuff that I thought would help me maybe in my career. I started now focusing more on the practices that would help me. And that was from sports to hanging out with new people, to more learning, more reading, traveling, all the pieces that I'd neglected. To the point where also I changed my roles eventually within the bank, and then also moved outside of investment banking to the investor side, so the other side of investment banking. COVID then hit as well, which was a really nice, and you probably talked to this but with a lot of people, it was a nice pause in many ways. As much as it was a massive traumatic event for everybody, I think there was some respite and some point of reflection that again really helped. Kind of then change your direction maybe, or again just focusing on the things that you were maybe neglecting or making excuses for. So that was another, I guess, blessing.
Yeah.
And
It's
so yeah,
strange. It's kind of like, it was quite confronting, wasn't it?
yeah,
And like, I think it either went one of two ways, I think, for a lot of people. And I think, you know, if you were lucky enough to be furloughed, I think obviously the people that are self-employed kind of that hit them the hardest. But yeah, I totally agree. That was kind of when I started my whole healing journey as well.
mm,
Also, what you mentioned as well, I think that's like really realistic. Like a lot of these conversations I'm having with people, I feel like it can maybe come across like quit your job, like move to a different country, like just, you know, be free. But that's just like not reality.
yeah,
And, you know, the reality is like I'm working a day job, you know, Monday to Friday. And then I do my kind of healing stuff on the side. And as
right,
you say, I've like reviewed other points in my life which weren't kind of working for me anymore. So,
yeah,
you know, I've made a lot of new friends. I'm trying out a lot of new things, you know,
yeah,
for example, your Wim Hof workshop the other week, which we'll go into in more detail soon. So yeah, so I think that's the kind of message I think is important for us to kind of relay to the audience is, you know, if you are in, you know, a bad point in your life right now and maybe work's not great for you, you know, we're not kind of saying you need to quit, you need to do this, you need to
right,
do all of the things. At the end of the day, we all need to pay the bills, we need to pay rent, we need to pay mortgages, whatever. But yeah, try and find more things in your life that like enrich your soul. Like if you don't feel like the people that you're surrounding yourself with are understanding the language that you're speaking, you know, not literally but like emotionally and spiritually,
yep,
then that's like a big kind of telltale sign and like a red flag, like okay, things need to be changing and these things are confronting you for a reason. And like I think that's really, to be honest, I think it's cool that you're like, yeah, I stayed in my job for 2 years but I handled it in a way different way. And like, yeah, I think that's really
yeah.
interesting.
No, it's a really good point. I think me and Paris talk about it a lot. It's all about the one percenters.
Yes.
Not everybody can go from that 0 to 100. Maybe you can, and the
Mm.
situations and terms just worked out for you.
Yeah.
But and we'll get into the method. But the method, one of the core principles of it is you being in control
Yeah.
and you trusting that process.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that really spilled over into everyday life, which
Mm-hmm.
is that if you can make these small impact changes, things that yeah maybe bring you happiness, ultimately maybe inner peace. To your point, maybe it's better conversations. Like these things all add up, and then when you are faced with things that may be a bit more negative, at least you have a bit more perspective.
Yeah.
I think yeah, for a lot of people out there, the first step is definitely that self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
to just be able to say, hey, maybe this isn't the position I want to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second step is obviously, hey, what do you want to do about that? Which is equally as tough.
Yeah.
To
Totally.
figure out.
I
Yeah.
think it's just like actually taking action. I think for a while that was like, I remember speaking with some of my friends about, you know, some creative like projects that I wanted to start. And they were like, just do it. You know, they were artists. And they're like, just do it, you know, just get up and do it. And I was like, yeah, but, you know, and there's so many buts and ifs. And, you know, it's like you're self-sabotaging without even realizing it. And I think that's just because you're not quite there yet emotionally to kind of move on to that next kind of stage. So but yeah, let's go into the Wim Hof method more. So can you give us like the core like fundamental parts of the Wim Hof method, and how you kind of, I mean obviously we did it the other day in the course, but explain it. So if we were going to come, if the audience were going to come to one of your workshops,
Yep.
how does the day look for the guests and for you?
Sure. Yeah. So the Wim Hof method at its core is a natural path to a more optimal state of mind and body. So what does that actually mean? It uses 3 pillars. So we use breath work, cold exposure, and mindset commitment training. And we use them as what we call acute stressors. So an acute stressor is the right sized amount of stress in the right moment, which induces an outsized biochemical response from your body. So by going to these active stressors and acute stressors, you're then able to deal with kind of everyday stressors, in a much better way. So it's really nicely framed actually through the principle of hormesis. So hormesis, if you think about our ancestors going way back, they were more subject to natural stresses. So more extreme heat, more extreme cold, more survival of the fittest type situations, right? Like, were they going to be eaten by that large animal? Did they eat that fungi?
Yeah.
Constantly the body's receptors were being turned on and having to be faced by these stresses, whether it be literal physical stresses of heat and cold,
Yeah.
or psychological, neurological stresses from food and animals. And then we had massive industrialization, massive modern technology change, which has been brilliant for us all. I think we can all agree, particularly from a connection standpoint, from ease.
Yeah.
But at the same point, you can I think, argue pretty strongly that it's made us also numb and a little bit weaker, because a lot of those receptors get turned off through the fact that, now food is readily available, it's cooked in a different way. We have different stresses on our life now. So it's more the work-life balance stresses, the monetary stresses that we have, just the speed at which we all live. And then the one I always like to use in workshops is, and I appreciate today we're filming when it's 29, 30 degrees, but say we're in December, and it's 0 degrees, you and I could actually probably not experience the true temperature in a meaningful way if we wanted to, because your beautiful home will be heated. Maybe you go to work in your heated car, your office then has a certain temperature, and then you come home again.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, if we've been doing that for the last 30 years of our life, those receptors that were there with our ancestors and they're still within us, just get more and more numb, more and more turned off. And so the body's not being able to adapt and build back stronger from these adaptive stresses that it otherwise would.
Yeah.
And then the other concept, and I don't know if you had this growing up, but you would never go outside in the cold not wearing much, right? You'd have layers and layers. And if you didn't, you'd catch a cold, right? That was what we were told.
Yeah.
Whereas it's the complete opposite, actually, with how the body's trying to work. So, if you come to a workshop, we really try and dive deeper into using these acute stresses. And, this is I guess you'd call it long or short, but it's a 6-hour period, a workshop, where we would take you through, in particular, the science of breath, the science behind this method. We can come back to breath more broadly, just around, how we functionally breathe every day and some of the issues with that. We take you through the science, the method, and then also an active breathwork session, so deep diaphragmatic Wim Hof style breathing, followed by mindset application through yoga exercises, through poses, through influencing your blood flow in the body, and then culminating in the cold exposure, which in this case is a 2-minute ice bath, completely optional by that point. You can also grab cold exposure in so many different ways, right? Like just wearing less layers, maybe dipping your feet in ice. And so it's a real journey for participants. But really what it boils down to is, if you can go to these active stresses of breath and cold, ultimately you come out of your mind more into your body, and you reconnect more deeply with yourself. And through more deeply connecting with yourself, you connect with others, and ultimately we can all then connect with Mother Nature, and use Mother Nature to our benefit.
I mean, even from firsthand, I can say, like, from when everyone sat down in that kind of like entrance way in that yoga studio, everyone was a bit like polite, like, hi, yep, here, yep, oh, nice to meet you. And then, everyone's voices are quite like timid and shy. And then like starts out and you're like, right, everyone, just let's go around the circle and say a little something. Everyone was really hesitant to kind of say something. And then it was still kind of nicey. And then it was literally after the first group breathing session, like the light switch had changed for like every single participant. And everyone was just like, oh my God, that was amazing. And then they were like, just so much more tactile with each other. People were like hugging, and it was like all those kind of like social boundaries that we've kind of got ingrained within our like belief systems and the way that we've been brought up in our lives, especially in the British culture as well. It was just so awkward naturally. It's just like shut us down. But like quite quickly I was just like, oh my God, I could totally like hang out with these people on a night out now. And like, I feel like I really kind of got to know everyone. And so it really did work. And it was like all of us, like, so I brought a friend with me who was kind of you know, she's not, I'd say, like super spiritual or anything like that, but that's why I thought it'd be interesting to bring her and see how she responded to it.
Yeah.
um and she responded so well. She was just like, by the
Yeah.
end of it,
Yeah.
she just absolutely loved it. And I was so shocked that she got in the ice bath. And it
Yeah.
just goes to show, like, it's really for everyone. And the preparation that you did, it was like major props to you for like all of the preparation, because everyone who got in the ice bath was composed. There was no
Yeah.
screaming. Not one person screamed. And people
Everyone
were
was in
like,
control.
yeah, everyone was in control of their thoughts. But at the beginning of the day, like, I don't know if you remember, but my friend, you were like, this isn't competitive or anything, but we're going to try hold our breath for like, you know, just a few, just a little bit. And she
Yeah.
held it for like 10 seconds and was like, oh God, I've had enough. You know,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
that's all
Yeah.
I can do. By the
Yeah.
end of it, she was holding it for like 2 minutes, and it was
Hey.
all because she was kind of practicing. So I know that
Yeah.
we started on you kind of talking about, we're like a nation of shallow breathers. Can you kind of like expand into that a little bit more?
Yeah. Totally. So I guess we're a nation of shallow breathers, or more globally.
Yeah.
Also, we tend to overbreathe
Mm,
as well. And at the end of the day, we breathe on average 20 to 25,000 times a day.
wow.
And I don't know about you and your listeners, but like, we're never taught how to breathe. You were taught subjects, you were taught manners, you were taught whatever it was, how to drive, but like the actual automatic system of breathing didn't really take note of.
Mm,
But if you think back to yoga practices, meditation practices, like yoga's only like yoga in terms of what we know, I guess new age yoga in terms of movement and form and holds is only really 100 years. Whereas prior to that, yoga was just breath,
wow.
different ways
Wow.
of breathing.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And so, through the different breath, obviously with yoga, you would move your body in certain ways. There would be flow. And so the new age yoga has kind of brought that a little bit more dynamic, and it's massive benefits, as we all know.
Yeah.
But going back to, shallow breathing and over breathing,
Mm-hmm.
most of us will, you can try this at home. If you put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and you take in a nice inhale through your nose, you may feel one of the hands rise more than the other. And for a lot of people, it is that top hand.
Yeah. That's for me, it is.
Yeah. And, we call that shallow breathing, or, high lung breathing, because the depth of oxygen isn't getting to the base of the lungs and through the diaphragm. And really, if you think about what stress is, stress could come in the form of anything. So somebody yelling at you, swearing at you, did you don't like a look of someone, a bad memory, whatever it was you're faced with, somebody beeping at you. But ultimately, what that translates into, how you're reacting, how you're feeling, is just biological inside, and what that does on the cellular level. And breath is a massive signaler to the body of how you want to be feeling. So the body has the nervous system, which is essentially electrical pulses that dictate how you move, how you feel, how the body reacts to things. And there's an autonomic side of it. Breath is included in that. And there's also a more voluntary function, kind of the somatic side. So if you move your muscles, etc. And a lot of the autonomic processes have been shown through the method can be influenced. So they're not as automatic as we thought. But if you think about breath and that autonomic nervous system, people would have heard of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And the sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight mode. So where you're faced with, we'll use the old example of, a bull chasing you or a lion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the parasympathetic mode, which is the rest and digest. And that shallow breathing that we've just kind of demonstrated is, at a biological level and a cellular level, a translation to a message to your body that fight or flight mode needs to be engaged. And so if you think about that on a prolonged basis, being in that state for a prolonged basis isn't natural. You really kick into that state when you need to, and when your body gets optimized, whether that be through massive adrenaline rushes, pupils dilating, less digestion in the stomach, more blood flow to the body. People tend to feel when they're in that mode, they just act on instinct.
Yeah.
And that's really the signal that this shallow breath is doing. So you can see what that could do to the body over time in terms of it being turned on. Just how you wouldn't want your car engine revved up all the time.
Yeah.
You want to keep it in that steady state and, rev it when you need to get, to something you need to do. It's kind of like that with the body as well.
Does it raise your, so I mean, I'm not super sciencey, gotta say, but in terms of like, does it, when you are shallow breathing all the time, does that raise your cortisol? Is that like one side effect as well?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I keep hearing, like raised cortisol is like a huge issue in like modern day society now for a lot of chronic health conditions.
Totally.
I know on the course you mentioned about like how people with autoimmune disorders, it's really helpful doing, cold water immersion. For me, I have psoriasis, so it's like it is an autoimmune condition, not on the kind of super bad scale at the moment, but I'm still quite young, so I'm always quite aware that one autoimmune condition can lead to another. So I mean, I swear, was there like an example of like certain autoimmune conditions that you've heard about or that have been affected in positive ways?
Countless. I mean, like miracle examples.
Okay.
So if you think about autoimmune, autoimmune comes from chronic inflammation ultimately, right, in the body.
Yeah.
And so how can this method help that? It's by cutting that inflammation. The body's in a more alkaline state so that, it can regenerate and just be in a better state for your body to be operating in.
Yeah.
A few examples that I've read about and I've also seen Wim talk about live. This is kind of funny, but so one of the instructors who was leading my instructor course in January in Poland, was now a lead instructor for the last kind of 10, 12 years. And he rocked up to that same academy as a kind of level 1 instructor, like somebody just taking the course 10 years back. And just prior to that, he'd been there before in a wheelchair.
What?
So he rocked up for a week in a wheelchair to have a week with Wim and just other strangers. And in true Wim Hof fashion, for any listeners that know him, by the way, Wim comes across as, I guess if you looked at him, you think he's a Viking.
Yeah.
Viking type vibe, like strong, manly warrior, like that's it. But really what he's about is about love, is about compassion, is about honesty and just opening up. So he brings a really cool feminine, masculine dynamic. And I think really rewriting what a man is. And, we can get into it separately, but the misnomers around what masculine energy it really is.
Yeah.
Sorry, I give that context because when he rocked up, the guy in the wheelchair, the first words that Wim said were, "Hey man, fuck the wheelchair." Right? And his guys came around, they're like, "Hey man, he didn't mean that, like, just ignore that." But what he was actually trying to say was, look, we're going to take you through a process that's going to heal this. And I know exactly why, because this is a science-based, evidence-proof method.
Wow.
Yes, it's spiritual as well, but it is ultimately science foundation-based. And what him and other studies have shown in the medical world. So through breath, what happens when you do deep diaphragmatic breath work that goes deeper into the lungs, assimilates more oxygen into the body, and gets more carbon dioxide out through every out breath, is that you raise alkalinity in the body, because carbon dioxide is ultimately acidic. So the more you can get out, the more your blood alkalinity rises. And also because you are simulating a fight or flight response to your body by doing this kind of active breathing, even though you're just kind of lying in a workshop like you were, you have a massive raised level of adrenaline, which in turn cuts cortisol levels, and which in turn also cuts inflammation and the receptors that are normally turned on to promote inflammation in the body that would have been just running riot.
Wow.
So if you cut inflammation in the body, you've raised the alkalinity, it's just being in a more optimal state. Like think of that car example again. It's just becoming a more well-oiled machine that's just going to run nicely.
Yeah.
You combine that with the cold exposure, which is what this guy did over a week. Again, cold, massive adrenaline hit, massive dopamine hit, massive reduction in inflammation. It is ultimately anti-inflammatory because it works with certain parts of the nervous system to stop the I guess the automatic way that they would respond. And so by cutting inflammation, raising alkalinity, bringing that optimal state, lo and behold, the guy after 5 days was out of a wheelchair.
What? So what?
Yeah.
What was his condition in the first
Sorry,
place?
yeah. His
Yeah.
underlying condition was Lyme disease. So a
Wow.
typical autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying that this is miracle cure by any means for
Yeah.
everybody, and everybody's different.
Yeah.
But from what we've seen, the studies, the evidence, either people are completely rid of their underlying autoimmune and disease.
Yeah.
Or with the case of another guy who had MS, 75% of his day was normal.
Wow.
As opposed to just being bedbound or not being energetic or not being able to do anything for most of the day. He was now active for 15, 16 hours. And then, yeah, he would suffer, but it's a completely different, way of life and quality of life that can be promoted through doing this practice. But what I will say, it's not like taking a pill.
Yeah.
So, why doesn't everybody do deep breath work? And why doesn't everybody grab a cold shower and ice bath? Because it's fucking hard work. And we'll come to that in terms of the mindset as well, right? But
yeah,
I think, and that was another thing that dropped for me, penny dropping, where we talked about the, what did you want to change in your life?
mm-hmm.
Is equally as hard work, I think, in my mind, to be unhealthy as it is healthy.
Yes.
So which one am I going to pick?
Yeah, that's so true when you flip it on its head like that. I mean, Christian and I were literally having this discussion because we were like, I'm going to be honest with you. So it's been 2 weeks since we did the course.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, I haven't had a cold shower apart from today because I knew I was having to.
Same here.
So I was just like, okay, great. That was really awesome. Had the best day of my life. But I'm just gonna close that little door and just go on with my little life. But this was something that we were discussing. So I was kind of putting together some questions and I was just thinking about what I wanted to talk with you about. And then Christian was like, how can you ask Ravi, how does he motivate himself every day to get in the shower and, and say you're late and you've got to do this breath work and then you get in the shower. And, you told us on the course, you were like, it's not easy to do this breath work. It's actually, it's a workout. It's like a breath workout. And so it's really full on. Can you give anyone who's listening and me any tips to kind of keep motivated for that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question from you guys because, it's not as if I just was doing this day one and was doing it every day. It took time.
Yeah.
What I would say is, I guess with anything, once you start to see a tangible benefit in it or something else, usually your mind starts to kind of form a more habit creation around it, right? And you want to do it.
Yeah.
But if you think, okay, so if we stick back to actually being in bed, which is most people are in bed and then they get up. Number one's biggest problem is why do you want to get out of bed? And it isn't because you want to take a cold shower or go downstairs and do some breath work. But you can do the breath work from bed.
Yeah.
So what I started to do was, because I was the same, I didn't really want to get up and do this.
Yeah.
But to get me out of bed, I would do a countdown timer in my head, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to get out of bed. There's something in the mind that there's some studies shown around it that kicks in a response.
Mm-hmm.
The other nice bit is that, the Wim Hof app is great to guide you if you needed somebody to literally guide you through this breathing, work you up through it. But being in bed, I think is a nice way to start the day.
Yeah.
Kind of doing something active, but from a leisure standpoint. For the cold and for the cold shower, cold shower, ultimately first thing in the day, you're using willpower. There's nothing else at that point. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this a little bit in the workshop, but willpower is a finite resource that we each have, a certain amount of each day. Yeah. And it gets dwindled during the day doing different tasks, different conversations, stuff we want to do, stuff we don't want to do. So then it's about asking yourself, what do you want to use the willpower on? Mm-hmm. As opposed to what do you not want to use it on? And turning that cold shower or just getting into it, even to this day, I still have the same thought of, hey, I don't want to do this. But how do you start doing it? You start by, and this is what I did, I'd have a wonderful hot shower, like as long as I wanted, do all my stuff, get ready, feel good, first exfoliating, shampooing, whatever, do a whole routine.
Yeah.
And then right at the end, and start with 5 seconds, turn it to cold, and just stand and try and breathe.
Yeah.
And once you've done that 5 seconds, the next day when you try and do it, you add 1 second.
Okay.
And so by the end of the month, you're up to 35, 40 seconds, which is a massive difference, right? But it's just through those small 1%ers like we were talking about, where you build it and build it and build it. And you, from a neurologic standpoint, you're changing and rewiring the way your brain patterning is thinking, right, about this thing, that this active stressor that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I've heard it from so many people who have been doing this hot cold, who then start to see the benefits. And so that whole circle becomes way easier. But I get starting out is tough. And look, maybe doing it now is easier because it's warm.
It's probably best to start now.
And it leads into in the depths of December. Like there's so many things. But yeah, it's step by step. And then maybe you can build it to a point where you're just doing cold. And also remember, I think cold showers are really effective because they are super obtainable for most people. But also, if you guys aren't feeling that, try grab cold exposure in different ways. So instead of wearing like a bunch of layers, just wear the t-shirt. Maybe go barefoot sometimes. Maybe people look at you funny, but like there are different ways to engage that.
That's actually really helpful because I mean, after doing the course, I actually thought I had to do like 2 minutes solid. So I was just like, that was because obviously that's how we ended it. And so I was like, okay, right, I need to do a 2-minute shower. But today I kind of had hot and then I went to like lukewarm and then I went to like cold, but not completely all that way. So it was like cold, but not freezing yet. But I was just like, I was definitely like, whew, that's woken me up. So, okay, but that's really helpful. And I think like that advice for listeners out there, because I think, it's so unnatural from what we've been brought up with. It's like, have a nice warm bath as a kid, and then you have a nice warm shower. And I mean, I don't know, most of my female friends all have like the shower, like honestly, just so hot. It's like steaming. So it's so unnatural. But yeah, I think that's really, really good advice. And I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll kind of keep you updated with how I get on that.
No worries. And maybe I should have made it more clear like that.
No.
I don't want to set that standard, but it's like with everything, it is a bit of work.
And that's all good things take a bit of work, and that's kind of, I guess, the charm of it. Like when you get to kind of seeing those benefits, it'll be interesting to see like how that would help my skin actually, because I've like, I've pretty much healed myself, but sometimes it does kind of flare up a little bit on my elbows. So I'll see whether like doing that daily and whether that does help. It'll be really interesting.
Yeah, that'd be a good test study actually, because as we said, if you're keeping the acute and more chronic inflammation down, which is maybe what's happening in the body at certain times, and just
I think it is.
That's going to have a because diet has an effect, stress has an effect, etc. But this is a really good leveler. And to your point earlier, just around the cortisol levels, like because you can cut them through increases in adrenaline levels. What's the real benefit of that all is that a lot of people suffer from hormone imbalances. That might be sleep related, where melatonin levels aren't right. To your point, that might be elevated cortisol levels, where the body's always in stress mode, and then how you react to things, in an emotional way, are tough. But what you do by going to these stressors and allowing your body to pump up certain hormones, dopamine, noradrenaline, adrenaline, is that ultimately when these things spike, they have to come back down. And when they're spiking, cortisol is being cut. And so you end up with this situation where everything is kind of realigned again. And so if you think about somebody who can't sleep, they can't sleep because their melatonin levels haven't been triggered and risen enough. And that might be through blue light from the phone or just being ultra stressed with cortisol. But if you grab a cold shower, even at night, and I know that might sound crazy for a lot of people, you raise those adrenaline levels, you cut those cortisol levels. When the adrenaline comes back down, lo and behold, there's a really nice base for melatonin to now start rising.
Wow.
So there's a really nice simple, I guess, way to just start influencing your body's biochemistry, which we
Mm.
can all do.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you as well. I think I messaged you about this. So my mum's interested in, trying it out as well. And she's been on her own health journey. She's recently been diagnosed with celiac disease,
Yeah.
high blood pressure, lots of kind of chronic health stuff going on there. And she was kind of like reading up and saw that, certain, I don't know, can everyone do it? One, are there any kind of brackets of, health conditions or pregnancy or anything like that it's not recommended to do it?
Yeah, no, great question. So I guess what we like to preach, what we like to say is, obviously everybody knows everybody's body's different,
Yeah.
but ultimately with any of this stuff, and I think this applies in hopefully in everyday life, is, don't force.
Yeah.
So the method at its core, again, because you're reconnecting with yourself, reconnecting with others, with nature, what does that mean? Or what does that should mean? You should be more in tune with your body.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly wasn't very good at this in terms of pushing myself where I shouldn't be going, but listening to your body, whether that's energy levels, listening to it emotionally, listening to it physically, like what's going on. And so, I think, yeah, look, we talk about this in the workshop, but if you're pregnant, you probably don't want to be overactive breath work and overactive cold exposure. But other than that, for people who have underlying conditions, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, there isn't a reason not to do it.
Yeah.
But because of the solutions that can be found, but at the same time, everybody's different in the sense that it shouldn't be forced to the place where, it could be detrimental to your body.
Yeah.
So if you think about somebody with high blood pressure, why is the method beneficial? Well, when you go in the cold, and you hit a low degrees temperature, it's a massive cardiovascular workout for your body, because blood flow is being influenced and pumped to all the right areas that need to stay warm and functional, and away from the areas that aren't as critical. And so by opening up and closing those capillaries, arteries, and veins, that ultimately means less pressure, less force for your heart to be doing the work. Because all those millions of muscles that are around all your arteries, veins, capillaries are doing the work, and you're allowing them that opportunity to start working more and more efficiently. So for somebody like, with your mom or other people with high blood pressure, for example, there's been a lot of science and case studies done around how just actively going to ice bar, to cold exposure, has really started to help that blood pressure drop.
Wow. Okay. That's really interesting. And I think you probably, I don't know, I guess from my mum's case, you reach a certain age and, you start to worry about your health. I mean, both of us are an example as well. When you even start, reach your 30s and you start reevaluating the way that you're living life and the toll that it's taking on your body. So I guess when you, reach, that 60 kind of bracket, you're like, oh my God, you become fearful of everything. And I think, something like an ice bath can seem quite fearful, I guess. I mean, it was scary enough for everyone doing the course when we were like 20s, 30s, maybe 40s.
Can I just say as well, for the record, like, your ice bath journey was incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think, sorry to digress, but
no, thanks.
Everybody has their own journey in the ice, and everybody approaches it differently.
Yeah.
But I think you went second.
Yeah.
Which, again, you're stepping out of your comfort zone ultimately with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But the fact that you stepped up, came in, you actually were pretty controlled, I think. Even though maybe didn't feel it at times, but controlled through the breath, which is a massive signal for the body, controlled just through the way you entered, and then also your focus. And, the point is, if you're in a 0-degree ice bath, you can't think about anything else. That's the only way your mind's going to get you through this, and your body's going to get you through it. But what I loved is that you trusted the process, because, it can bring a lot of shallow breathing, a lot of panic, a lot of disorder to the body, which is fine. And then the body will start to know what it needs to do. But it needs you, neurologically to allow that to happen. And so, I think, even being 30 years old, to help heal yourself, like, you came in with a really positive attitude. It's still not easy to do what you did.
Yeah.
But I think you were, it should give you a lot of confidence, I think, when you go and grab cold showers or take your
Yes,
process
so
further in lakes, rivers, whatever it is. Like, you've done that. And I think we
yeah,
talked about in the workshop, like, if you can do an ice bath, you can do anything.
yeah, so true, so
Yeah.
true. I think, like, from my perspective, I get in my head way too much, and I'm one of these people, like, at university, I was recording podcasts then. So I was really confident in the work that I did. And then it was like the time where you had to show it.
Mm.
And like, if the lecturers would decide like what order you showed it in. And I'd walk in that kind of lecture theatre or whatever and be like so confident in my work, what I've done. And then
Yeah.
like 10 kind of reels down of other people, I'd be like doubting everything that I've done and like getting in my own head. So kind of in comparison, or like to transfer that over to the course, I was like, if I don't get in now, I'm going to get in my head and I'm going to be like,
Right.
oh my god, I can't do this. So my
Yeah.
kind of mental state was do it now and then it's done.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was but it was so no but it was so good because you really were so calming throughout, and like your presence there was just like your energy was amazing, like the language that you use, like it was like not loads of language, but
Sure.
so it didn't like overcomplicate like what was like the knowledge and the, like, I guess the language that was going in, because it was so intense being in such a, freezing environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was just like a really, and then the music as well, like I absolutely love music. For me is like so
Yeah.
healing. So the music that you chose throughout the whole course was so cool.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
thought that was like an amazing, it felt super spiritual and like I was on some sort of like nuts journey, and it was
Yeah.
great.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, as we say, you're getting high on your own supply. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's what it's about, right?
exactly.
You got to feel that good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah,
And
no, and going back to the 60 plus point, like being 60 years
yeah.
old, focusing on your health, like
Mm,
there's also this, and I have the same conversation with my mom over time, which is like, you hit a certain age and then you think about these things, or you think you need to be a certain way.
yeah, so
I think a
true.
lot of people, as they age, feel that with age comes less of everything,
Mm,
more moderation.
yeah.
Whereas, maybe we've come to this a little bit earlier in our lives, looking at health more holistically. It's like, well, actually, yeah, I do want to live to 130, and I want to be like on point, and I want to be healthy, and I want to feel good, and then it's like, what are the things you're doing to help you get into that situation, and maybe then not living the more, I guess, conditioned lives that a lot of us face.
Yeah.
Like, retirement's another thing that really gets to me. It's
I
like the amount of
know.
stories you hear, unfortunately, of people who retire and then are hit with bad illness, hit with death. Like, is that the real right way to be enjoying life and
Mm,
lust for life and the journey and
hundred
doing new
percent.
experiences and things like that? So
I
yeah,
think
it's a really interesting point.
the retirement part, I know we're digressing slightly, we'll go back, but it's interesting because my mum's been like basically working and working and working and working and working and working, and like we had this conversation, we walked around the park this morning and I was talking to her about like at what stage in her life she was, but she'd just been like, okay, 5 more months and then I've saved enough money to like have my own pension before, and then I can enjoy my life. I was like, okay, great. So retirement came around and now she's like, I don't know what to do with myself. I am not happy. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
fine, okay. And so now she's like looking for part-time jobs. And I'm like, okay, fine. If that's going to help you in the moment right now, then do it. But like, I kind of said to her, it's just, you're just putting a plaster on the issue. The
Mm.
issue is that you can't be in your own company and there's things that you probably haven't dealt with. And, that may come across like a little bit woke from like my end. I'm like half her age and I'm like lecturing my mum, and it's not
Yeah.
going to be like that. But I think how maybe, the younger generation are coming to these, like this clarity earlier on, is because the technical, like there's basically Instagram, Facebook, whatever we've kind of been, and like fast paced, I guess, environments along with technology, people are burning out quicker. Whereas like, in our parents' generation, it was, you have a landline and then you say to someone, I'll meet you there at this time, and you trust that they're going to be there.
Yeah.
But now it's not only that, it's like, oh, okay, that person hasn't turned up, but then I can see on Instagram that they've actually met another person. And wow, that makes me feel
Right.
bad. And then you've just got all of these, like, without even leaving the house, like what 100 other people on your like following list on your social media channels are doing, and people that you've never met before as well. So I
Right.
think that's, yeah, you're just coming like this, that heightened kind of cortisol again.
Yeah.
And then people are burning out. And then I think we're just coming to realizations earlier. But for our parents' generations, I personally think it's like retirement age, when it's, you know, you finally, your body like is stopping for once in its life. And then, as you say, health conditions come up, depression can come up, like feeling lost can come up.
Yeah. Lonely.
And that's another, yeah, it's another interesting topic. But anyways, we won't go too much into that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's um but yeah, so I mean, something I wanted to touch on before we kind of finish off and go into your guided breathing session. um I found the breathing session that we did, because I did all the Wim Hof breathing, like guided during the pandemic. That really helped. And then I did it with you, and it was like a whole different ball game. And I'm not sure whether it was like your instruction, the music, but then also it was the fact that it was group breathing. And it was like the whole room um was just like electric with energy. It was just like you could feel it. And when everyone came out, everyone was just like, whoa, you know? So can you just quickly, like, I guess, recap on like your experiences of group breathing, and why is it so powerful? Why is it more powerful than doing it on your own?
Yeah. No, really, and thanks for sharing like how you felt, because I get to witness that.
Yeah.
Like such a blessing.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, and then to your point earlier, like people change, like
Mm.
how they, you know, you're deconstructed a bit at that point, ego is gone, etc. Um, but I think, yeah, like group breath work, obviously there's a group energy. And again, because it's about reconnecting, I feel that that electricity is literally reconnected through people.
Mm.
You know, and our job as instructors, obviously, number one, to definitely create a safe zone, because through deeper breath work, you know, there can definitely be emotional change and things that need to be let out of the body, which is perfectly natural, but perfectly unnatural to most of us because, you know, we're also covered up.
Yeah.
And then it's also, I think, this element of, you know, people are there for various different reasons, but people have shown up to that point. So it's almost like there's this leveling and this grounding. So it's like a perfect potion mix of like energy, wanting to be there, wanting to gain something, just electrical current all fizzing up. My experience with it, and the first time I actually did it was in Poland again at my training academy, where there was 40 of us, and we had instructors who have been instructing for about 6 to 8 years guide us through. And it was like we were all holding hands.
Wow.
Like we were all physically connected, but then it was obviously way deeper than that spiritually.
Mm.
And the first group breath session I did that first morning, it triggered something in me, something I thought I dealt with. And that was from two racism events that happened to me growing up. One when I was about 12, 13,
Wow.
and then one when I was at university. And some words later on had triggered that in me through this group breath work, whatever had fizzled up, to the point where post the breath work, I just started crying.
Wow.
And I never cry, you know, and I hadn't, I do cry now more through the method, and you know, I'm more emotionally aware, but I'd never cried in that kind of group setting. And it was so alien to me. You know, first thing you do, you start to wipe your tears and you want to stop it. But luckily, an instructor grabbed my hand and he said, "Hey, man, just let it be. Like, this is what the body needs."
Wow.
And it just kind of poured out. And you saw it in so many other people. Didn't know what it was, but stuff is just coming out of the body, the entity that you're in, for whatever reason, to help you maybe think about things, help you deal with things, whatever it is. But yeah, for me, like, it's extremely powerful to have that. I think when you do it alone, it you know, and I do it alone every day in the morning, it definitely is a different spiritual effect.
Yeah.
But biologically, neurologically, it's doing the same thing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So whichever way you grab it. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's like the only way I could describe it. And you know, there probably isn't the right framing or wording or whatever for what is going on, because it's so subconscious, I
Yeah,
guess.
you can't
But you
describe
just,
it. You can't
yeah,
describe it. That's the thing. It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
It's stunning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. And like, honestly, when I was like at that point, I think it was like round 4 or round 5, I was like, felt like I was like floating. And then I started having like visualizations, and like there was like a really prominent like third eye just like floating around, and it was like, yeah, it was so cool. It was really, really good.
Yeah.
So anyways, so for you listeners, I know you're probably wanting to hear, what all of this kind of breathing is about. So to finish on, we're going to have Ravi do a guided breathing session for you all, and I'll let him take it away.
Great. Thank you. So guys, if you want to just get comfortable, recommend either lying down if you're listening to this podcast, or maybe if you're seated, just get in comfortable position. Start to lightly close over the eyes. Just start to invite a nice deep breath in through the nose, in through the mouth, it doesn't matter. Just get a nice deep breath into the body, and then just release the breath. Again, through the nose, through the mouth, doesn't matter for this round right now. Just going to allow the body to sink in. Maybe a little bit of movement is needed in the body just to get a bit more comfortable, but as you lightly glaze over your eyes now, what I'd like you to do is put one hand on the heart area, on the chest area, one hand on the belly. What we're going to try and do is through the nose, is invite a nice deep breath in. Really try and expand that belly and that chest, and then let it go in a natural way, just through the mouth. Just repeat that in through the nose, belly rise, out through the mouth, belly fall. And that is going to be our deep diaphragmatic breath. And one round of Wim Hof Method breathing. We're going to repeat that inhale and exhale 30 times, and I'm going to guide you through that. And we're going to end the round on a breath hold. So again, if you just want to make sure your eyes are lightly closed over, we invite a nice deep breath in, fully in, through the nose, and let it go, just in a nice natural way, through the mouth. As you get to the bottom of that breath, fully in again, and let it go. Fully in again, through the nose, expanding that belly, letting it go with a nice long exhale. If you feel at any time, just repeating this breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Find your own pace. Don't force it. Whatever works for you. As we start to just lightly charge the body, bringing in oxygen, expelling CO2, fully in, and letting go. Just think of it as gear one, easing into the round. Maybe the body's starting to awaken a little bit, a bit more movement in the belly and the chest, just as you keep those full, deep inhales. And just let it go through a nice open mouth. Feel free to make any sounds, any sighs as you exhale. And on the inhale, just trying to grab as much oxygen as you can through that nice deep inhale, and exhaling just to a nice neutral position in the belly as we continue the breathing. Wim Hof breathing, round one, gear one, just easing into it. And as you continue that breathing for a few more, what's starting to happen in the body, starting to elevate oxygen levels, starting to slowly expel carbon dioxide levels, in turn starting to kind of supercharge the body a little bit. You may start to find a little bit of sensation coming in the hands, the ears, the feet. It's all natural. It's all meant to be in that sense. Just let it be. It's probably showing you actually a good awareness of the body coming out of the mind. Just going to take the last 10 breaths in here together. So wherever you are, just finishing on a nice exhale. And take a nice deep breath fully in through the nose. Belly rise. Letting it go. Taking another breath in. And let it go. Great work through round 1. Last 8 breaths fully in. You can stick to my voice pace or find your own pace, but keep it in gear 1. Fully out. Fully in again. Letting it go. Last 5 breaths now. Fully in. Let it go. Last 4, fully in. Let it go. Last 3 now, fully in. Let it go. Last 2 now, give it your best. Fully in as much as you can. And letting it go. Wherever you are now, taking your last full breath in as much as you can, fully in, exhaling the breath, exhaling, and as you finish your exhale, I want you to hold your breath. Hold your breath at this point. We're going to pause here and just relax into this, so no more breathing, just have that long exhale where we're now holding the breath, and just sink into this. We've got a ton of oxygen in the body, less CO2. Just start to sink into this feeling. Relax the shoulders. Bring awareness to the body. We're just going to hold our breath together for a short period of time, allowing the body to start to de-stress. Start to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Doing really great. We'll keep it a few more seconds here. Wim Hof breathing, round 1, eased into it. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Together, let's take a nice deep inhale through the nose. As much as you can. This is called the reset, recharge breath, and hold. Hold the breath there. Getting more oxygen in the body again. Just for another 5 seconds, hold the breath there. And 4, 3, 2, 1. Just let it all out. Let it out with a nice open mouth. Just sigh it all away. Just let it go. As you start to bring your awareness back to the breath. That is Wim Hof Fundamentals breathing, round 1. If you want to continue it, proceed just doing the same 30 inhales and exhales. Still in gear 1, maybe you bring it up to gear 2 for the next round. And just remembering on that 30th exhale is when we hold the breath. Hold it without force. Feel what's natural to the body. And when you feel you need to breathe, grab that one last breath in through the nose. Hold again for another 10 to 15 seconds and then exhale. And that is another round complete of the breathing.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I feel like, it's been, I feel like we first kind of had an amazing conversation over the phone, and then I did your course and now the podcast, and I feel like I know you so well now.
I know, likewise. I was just thinking that as I was talking to you, I was like, Emily's someone I want to hang out with.
I know, totally.
So, yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love that. And no, again, thank you so much for coming to the workshop and just leaning in. It's so beautiful, like to witness you, Christian, your friend Faye, like all coming together for it. And obviously just so grateful for this and for the time.
Yeah,
And
no,
your podcast, your platform, like really happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Take care, Ravi. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Emily. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.